Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for VideoCopilot.net, and welcome back to another very exciting tutorial. Today, we're going to take a look at some cool new features of our new plugin Element 3D version 2, and hopefully show you what is possible. So, originally, Element was designed as a way to import 3D objects into After Effects. And in version 2, we've taken it to a whole new level. We've added things like shadows, better ambient occlusion, we've added dynamic reflection maps. So if you're working with a client and they want to change the color of the background, you can just come over here to group 2, set the color to blue, they don't like that, maybe white or gray or black, and they're like, nah, I don't like that. And then you just say, all right, I'll just turn it off, and they could just be floating. And they're like, perfect. So speed was definitely a top priority, and that's why we redesigned the UI as well. So inside of the new UI, we've made it faster, more organized. We've got group folders, and you can see this is actually output to group 1. And I can move things in and out, so I can take these headphones and drag them out. And I can move stuff inside of the folders, and I can have folders inside of folders. So some really cool things for organizing your files. Now, we've also got all the navigation controls, so we can move things around, we can duplicate things. We can rotate them, hold down shift, and you can rotate by angle. All that cool stuff just to make the 3D scene a lot more productive. We wanted to make the render quality better as well. So we implemented a brand new physical shader system. So what this is a system that allows you to create more realistic materials based on real physical properties. So if we look at this kind of chrome material here, and I can actually just control click it, and it'll actually select it in the scene, and then I can scroll down and I can change the settings. So for example, I could change the tint color on the reflectivity, and this will actually, I could do like a gold color, and I could do blue, I could do any kind of a metallic color, and I instantly create that sort of a material. But what really makes the physical shader powerful is the glossiness slider. What this allows you to do is create sort of a blurred version of the reflection. Oh, another really cool feature of the UI is you can actually drag materials onto surfaces and change them. So it's just a handy way to be able to swap materials in and out. We really put a lot of work into this, and frankly, it almost killed us. But we didn't stop there. Let me show you some of the other cool new features in Element 3D version 2. One of my favorite new features is the 3D model deform tools. So what you can do is inside of each group, in the particle look, is a deform rollout. What this allows you to do is bend and twist and add noise to your 3D geometry. So in this case, I can turn up the intensity of this noise. I can create some really cool looks. I can animate it. I can add a third dimensional distortion. There's a couple of different noise types that will just create some various looks. And plus, inside of the advanced settings, there's a lot of cool controls for clamping the the effect essentially, and you can invert it. I'm just playing around here, but you can really create some fun, very cool effects. You have the scale of the fractal, so it can be really bubbly or it could be really high frequency. Now, in this other example, you can actually control the XYZ intensity for the noise amount. So what that will do is stretch it in a specific axis. So you can see here, stretched that way or stretched vertically. And so you can really create some fun looks. Now, I have another example here. I'll go ahead and shut the depth of field off, but basically have some blobs with some subsurface scattering that's creating this sort of translucent look. Here I have a sphere, fairly low resolution, but look at this. Whoa. Start to create some pretty wild looks here. So this is just another cool example. And again, you can use it with the replicator. So you can set the particle amount and create, random replications. If I scroll down here, there's an option called randomize. So if that's off, all of the noise particles will be the same. But if you turn that on, it'll create a random seed for each of the particles in your object replicator. Here's just another look with a slightly different color scheme here, but same idea. We can even go to the twist amount and twist it up as we do the model noise. So It's a very, fun thing to be able to animate and modify your renders in real time using Element 3D. So very cool. All right, so let's go and take a look at this example. So if I go into the scene setup, what we can see is I have a bunch of primitives that are just sort of stretched out. All right, so let's go and hit OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the particle look, go down to the deform settings, and I have the bend enabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the bend angle. So watch this. Look at that. So if it's 360 or negative 360, it'll actually come together in a perfect circle. All right, so we've got a nice bend going on. What else could we do? Well, we could go to the twist, turn that on, and say twist it on the y-axis. So check this out. And again, if we set this to 360, it's going to twist perfectly together as well as polygons can in this kind of a situation. Now I could increase the segments and smooth that out a bit, but you get the idea. We're creating this really cool, result, and it's all very interactive. Let's just go back here just a second. So let's go back to this point, right? I'll go to the replicator, set it to a plane, and I can increase the particle count. And now you can create some really cool, wild stuff. I don't even know what this is. Looks like some kind of like obstacle course for hamsters or something. Okay. All right, so I have another example here. I've got the Sony logo, and I can bend it. Now notice I have a bend direction, so I can change the direction, so I can bend it up, or I can bend it down, depending on what you want, and of course on all of the other axes. So if you feel like it starts doing some weird thing, try one of the other axis modes. So let's go set this back, and so I can bend this, and I can bend it into a circle, right? But one problem is, what if I want to rotate this in a circle? So I come up to the particle rotation, start rotating it, but it's kind of off kilter, it's kind of off axis, right? Well, there's an option that we've added called center. What this does is recenters the particle so that when you rotate it, it rotates it perfectly centered. So I can only imagine that someone from Sony is like saying, hey, stop using our logo. And I'm like, hey, don't get all bent out of shape, man. All right, I've got one more example here, and this is sort of this simulated water surface. So just kind of a cool little surface. Let me turn off the depth of field. All right, so if we look closely at the surface, we can actually see a little bit of deformation. We can see some layers sliding. We can actually see the bump map sliding along the surface. So this is actually a really cool setup. So it's not the perfect looking ocean, but what's really cool about it is I'm using the auxiliary animation to offset the UVs. All right, so in order to create this water surface, what I've done is I've taken a texture and I've blended it with 3 separate planes. So if I hide these real quick, you can see I have a base plane here with just kind of a wet looking bump map on it. And then I've got another layer, which kind of a little bit of like a whitewash. And then I have another layer on top of that, which is just a little bit more. So all 3 layers together kind of create, a nice ocean surface. So what's really interesting is that I'm using the auxiliary animation to output each of these planes to a separate channel. So channel 3, channel 1, channel 2. So if I hit OK, and I go to the particle auxiliary channels 1, 2, and 3, what I can actually do is I can offset the UV values. So the UV values are the texture values. So if you're using a tiled texture, like from Pro Shaders 1 or Pro Shaders 2, you can actually slide that around and create some secondary types of animations. All right, so another really cool feature is the per material wireframe. So if I click on our motorcycle green material, I can go down to the wireframe and turn it on. So now I have a wireframe that's only on this one material. So this just gives you a lot of options for creating, sort of high-tech looks, or even just having a quick effect go by. We can actually play around with the Fresnel effect on the wireframe, and it's all real time, so I can come up with some cool looks. So there's a lot of cool options here. Specifically, there's a fill mode, so I can set this to lines only, and then I can see the wireframe lines by themselves and it'll actually replace the actual mesh. Or I can change the color of the line to be from the material. So whatever the material settings are now going to be transferred over. So let's say I wanted to, change it to something else. I would actually be seeing the material. So that is the wireframe per material feature. So you can do some fun stuff with the wireframe. Now, another thing we've done is we've made our text extrusion tool even better. So what we've done is added an outline bevel option. So if I go into the element setup, I have an extrusion model here, and you can see there's a bevel outline, and if I just turn off the inside, you can see what that looks like. So it works exactly the same. If we click on the bevel, we have our bevel and our bevel outline settings. So what I can do is I go down to the bevel outline. If I turn it off, here we just have a standard looking bevel, but if I turn it on, now I can control the outline width. And the other thing about this is all the other bevel settings work the same. So if I go to the bevel, I can go and play around with the bevel size, and I can play with the curve, so I can make the curve, in or out, depending on what I want it to look like. So that's definitely a very cool feature that you can combine with all of the normal bevel options. Now, here's another example using the bevel outline feature. I've sort of extruded some various circles using a simple shape, a mask in After Effects basically. And so you can use it to build some elaborate effects in addition to using the built-in primitives as well. So here's my project file here. We can collapse all the materials. So I've got some tubes, but then I've also got some extrusions, and it's just a mixture of different objects to create this fun shape. Now, here's another example of some good-looking bevels using the bevel outline feature. You can see it's kind of got the glass look to it, and just gives it a little bit of depth without just being a simple bevel like you're used to seeing. Now, lastly, this feature is really, really helpful. So I've got this car logo here, and the one thing about this is that it can sometimes be hard to line things up. So if I turn the camera off and I turn on my text layer that I've created, and what you can see is that my extrusion is the same size. And that's because we've added a new feature called Bevel World Scale. So what that will do is automatically keep the size of the text the same as the size of the text that you create. So if I were to take this text here, hit S, scale it up to 200, my 3D text is going to be recreated at the same size. So it doesn't use the same position because it has its own coordinate system, but the size of the font is exactly the same. And what's nice about that is that in the case of like a shield or something like this, what you could do is you could create multiple parts of your design using separate layers, and they'll all work together in the same relative scale. And of course, don't forget about the possibilities once you start using the bend and deform tools for your 3D text and 3D shapes. Another really useful feature is the per material transfer mode. And this is the ability to have transfer modes inside of your objects to create some really cool effects for HUD displays or UI designs and stuff like that. So let me just kind of run you through this project here. So we have real 3D objects combined with various layers of additive modes. We've got wireframe mixed in here, and just some cool mixtures of some various effects. Let me jump into the scene setup and we'll take a look. So it looks pretty crazy here. So if we just grab one of these objects and alt-click, we can kind of move it around. You see, basically it's a texture on a plane, and what I could do is if I go to the advanced setting, I can set the transfer mode to normal, and that's what it looks like, but we can now set it to add or screen, and it'll blend with the rest of the scene with transparency. Another thing we could do is we could go to the illumination and we could change the color, and we could This is a really, really cool feature, and you don't just have to do UI stuff. You could do smoke or fire, other type of additive effects that you want to blend inside of your 3D scenes. Here's another example using the additive mode. I created sort of like a energy galaxy kind of effect. And if we go into the setup, you can see we have some various planes with some textures on them. So these textures are being emitted on various groups. So I got group 1 and 2 and 3. And essentially, so on group 4 here, I can scale up the particle, and you can see that I've kind of creates like a swirl effect. I'm using the ring, so I can even decrease this to say 8. And because of the additive mode, we're actually getting some volumetric type of properties. This is actually some of the same techniques we did on the Star Trek title sequence as well. All right, so when you import an object into Element 3D that has multiple sub-meshes, so if we come over here, there's a mesh view, and we open up the car, we can see that the car is broken up into tons of little pieces. And in fact, I can control-click on them, hold down Shift, and I can grab these parts and move them around. So essentially, there's a lot of little pieces. Now, if I hit OK, one of the cool things that you can do with Element 3D is use the multi-object system. So if we go to the particle look, there's a feature called multi-object. So if we enable that, it's off by default, but if we enable it, what we can do is we can scatter the pieces of this model around. So I can go to scatter and I can do some really nice looking animations. But one thing that's happening here is that the floor is flying all over the place, and it's not quite doing what I want. So here's some solutions. So one thing I could do is I could put the floor onto a separate group like group 2, and that way it wouldn't move around. But let's say instead of a floor, it was a warehouse or something that was specific to my scene. Well, what you can do now in the new version of Element is that you can exclude objects from the multi-object system. So I can take the plane, click on Advanced, and it says Enable Multi-Object. We'll just uncheck that, hit OK. So now if I scatter the pieces around, the plane will stay put. So that's cool. But what about wanting to kind of create a very specific look or creating a very specific animation that isn't so random? Let's say I want to have the shell of the vehicle separate. So let's control click, and you can see here there's a sort of a shell on top. Well, what I'll do is I'll take that sub mesh. So remember, you have to be in mesh view. Click on auxiliary animation and set it to channel 1. Then go to the advanced, turn on multi-object. Instead of inherit, which will do whatever the object says, we're going to turn it off. So now if I hit OK, scroll down to the scatter here, and all of the pieces are going to scatter except for the chassis. So what good is that? Well, now what I can do is I can go to the auxiliary animation for channel 1, and I can move that separately and animate it in specifically when I want. So here's an example of that in action. All right, so it's kind of like a drunk transformer or something, so not too bad. But that's the idea, and you can really do some fun stuff because anytime you're using Element 3D's new group folder, so that's when you use a whole group and you output it to a specific channel, it's a virtual particle. So this virtual particle will scatter anything that's inside of it. So watch this. So let me just go over here to this project since it's already set up. And let me go down to the starter models. So we have just a couple basic models. And one of the models happens to be this fractured ball. So let's just scale it down here. And let me drag it inside of the group folder here. And by the way, if you hit Z, it'll zoom in on the object you have selected. So this ball, by the way, if you can't see, if I hit F, you can look at the wireframe. The ball is actually fractured, so I can move the pieces of it around. So let's see what happens. I'm going to hit OK. All right, so pretty cool result. This is a dangerous thing to do because I never tried this before, and I'm glad it worked. So in addition to developing Element 3D version 2, we also created 3 new products that will help you take advantage of all the new features and all of the new capabilities. Backlight is a collection of HDRI environment maps as well as light maps in very high resolution. So I'm actually just going to use the 2K because that'll keep the memory usage down, and it pretty much gives you a really good result. So basically what you do is you just click on the environments and it changes your entire scene's lighting using the physical shader system. So basically, as you click through these, you can see they're all designed to have really cool, really nice looking reflections. You can go into the environment map and see it's loaded. You can also play around with the settings, so you can increase the brightness and you can play with the gamma to create even more looks. So this is the idea behind Backlight. It's background lighting or image-based lighting to create more impressive looking reflections and illumination. Now, the other side of Backlight are the individual light maps and the light arrays. So those are going to show up in your model browser. So if we come over here to the Backlight, we're going to see light arrays and single lights. The single lights look something like this, and we can click on them and add them into the scene. So I'll click on this single light, and we'll just kind of move it up, and I'll rotate it. And you can actually see that it's affecting the light here. So I can even scale it a bit. And it gives a nice bit of reflection. We also have the light arrays. So these are the multi-lights. Now, you can also use the lights as design elements to create cool like light arrays. I know in this particular example, I just have the color tinted blue. You can duplicate these and you can really create some elaborate scenes. So with a little bit of work, you can actually do some really nice stuff with the reflections and gloss. This texture on the ground is actually from the Pro Shaders 2 collection. I think it's one of the concrete maps. So all of the products work really, really well together. All right, let's go and take a look at Pro Shaders 2. We've added some brand new categories, and there's over 300 materials to choose from. So we can go down to some concrete, and basically all you do is you take it and you drop it onto a surface that you want to change. So you can see beautiful looking reflectivity and gloss. If you want to test out the shader sampler, what you could do is go into the starter model and go down to the trophy, and you can load that and practice and experiment with different materials. So one of the main reasons that the materials look so realistic is that they're based on the physical properties of the environment. So if I go up to the environment settings, I can actually change stuff like the gamma and the brightness and even the saturation and change the overall look of all of my shaders. So this is helpful if you want to change the entire look of all the materials in your entire scene. Now, you can use some of the built-in environments, but we also offer Backlight, which is a collection of 50 8K environment maps. So you can see that they dramatically change the tone of your scene, and you can create more dramatic looks. You can create more studio lighting looks. So it's important to think about your material settings, but you also want to be thinking about how your environment is affecting your materials. And finally, let's go and take a look at the 3D Motion Design 2 model pack. So what is Motion Design 2? So it's a huge collection of all sorts of models. So this time we really focus on industrial, technological, high-tech, robotic. We really created some of the most incredible models that I have ever seen. The detail on these is absolutely amazing, and this is probably one of the more simple models. So basically, it's a collection of things that you can use to build other things. One of the things that we created are some really cool hinges and pistons and things that you can use to sort of dress your backgrounds of your sets. You could build really cool high-tech designs and titles. I actually used some of this equipment for a scene with some, some high-tech, supports for some aircrafts of the future. So just a little bit of detail. I'm actually using the Pro Shaders 2 textures to give it a little grunge, but these little things are essentially holding up these ships, and it just adds a ton of detail to the shot. All right, so let's go and take a look at the collection. So I'm going to jump inside the scene, and we'll come over here to the model browser, and I'll scroll down to the Motion Design 2 pack, and there really is just a ton of stuff. So we've got things called beams. So beams were one of my ideas of being able to build a virtual set for a title or for like a high-tech laboratory or something like that. Or maybe it's a futuristic stovetop. I don't know. That's what these objects were designed for, is not to be specific things, but so that you could go in and create interesting things out of it. So they're all set up with multiple materials so that you can apply materials to specific parts and really create what you want to create. So I've got another scene here, and I just put some bolts on here. So it looks just like a logo. Next thing you know, it's bolted down. It means it's serious business or something. But once you bring one of these out, you can just hold down Alt and drag it, and you can just place it. So they really didn't want this thing to go away, so they bolted it down pretty good. I would say maybe just one more over here. Nice. Yeah, there's a ton of different styles, and I mean, just look at the insane amount of quality on these. Like, it really is ridiculous. We could probably have made multiple packs out of all these models. So we got some really cool hinges. So the hinges are actually set up to be used with a multi-object auxiliary system. So if I control click, I can actually hit the rotation key and I can rotate this. So if you were to set up some group folders, you could do a little bit of, rigging to, create something that's connected to the backside of this and actually have it, control it to a certain degree. And you can see that the components have like really nice working parts. They're not just designed to look good. They actually do have some functionality. Really high quality liquid meshes. These, look at this. I already created an amazing design. Once you add red, the design's done. All right, so here's some really cool mech stuff. I mean, look at this, like literally. It's insane how much stuff is in here. This is the portal where everyone goes to and something happens. They bring back Magnum PI. So there's a bunch of different designs here. There's also some cool badges, and you can see these ribbons down here that you could use to throw, a title on there. And we've got some high-tech screens. These are really cool. So you need to put some video up on something, and you need some kind of high-tech screen, and the screen should be spinning out of control. You can completely do that in here. And I know the producer's like, no, we need to be spinning faster. And you just keep spinning that thing. He's going to love it. Moving on. All right, let's keep going. Shields. Oh my goodness, this pack never ends. Sunday night football. How about some Sunday night knitting for your wife? Make her a nice little graphic. She'd love it. Some lens flares. Mind blown. All right, let's see here. By the way, if you hit Z after you add an object, it will select that object. And think about how cool this would look with some deform on it as well. So you can, these models are really, really cool, but check this out. I open this up. Check that out, not too bad. And of course, there's some more tech components. I mean, you're ready to make a sci-fi movie or some high-tech graphics immediately. And then we have an insane collection of tubes and pipes. So check this out. So I've got these tube systems that you could run some pipes along the wall. But look, if you alt drag these, they actually connect together. So you can create endless kinds of scenes, and even ones that don't look like they connect together. Most of them are designed to connect. So see this one? Get out of here. Pretty cool. So pipes. Definitely. So think about the scene in Jurassic Park where they're like looking and he's like, follow the pipes. You could make that scene. So here's just a quick little scene that I put together with a couple of the pipes, and I actually used some more of the Pro shaders to give it more of a grungier pipe look. All right, so this is the Motion Design 2-pack. All right, thank you guys for watching. Element 3D version 2 will be available individually, and we're also going to have some great bundles with all of these packs in it as well. Thanks again. I hope you guys check it out. I'm Andrew Kramer, and we will see you next time.